first debate over the weekend, Hill.
The economy is expected to expand 2.5% this year.
Korea's ties with its global partners on the sidelines of the status UN summit. A massive drone attack on Ukraine overnight on Monday and Tuesday.
Arirang.
South America summit diplomacy begins. President Lee Jae-myung is set to hold talks with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the highlight of his state visit to Brazil, the first stop on his three-nation tour to the continent. We have a preview from Brasilia. Remembering the armistice. Monday marks the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement, as well as UN Forces Participation Day. We look at how South Korea is honoring those who fought in the war while expanding support for communities still living with its legacy. And a pause in the fighting? The latest exchange of strikes between the United States and Iran appears to have come to a halt for now, with the two sides now communicating indirectly through mediators. Could the pause pave the way for a more lasting de-escalation? Good evening, and thank you for joining us here on Newscenter. I'm Song Yoo-jin, filling in for Kim Da-mi. We begin tonight in Brazil, where President Lee Jae-myung will hold a summit with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in the coming hours after wrapping up the U.S. leg of his five-nation tour. Our Blue House correspondent Yoon Jung-min, who's traveling with the president, has this preview.
Upon arrival in Brazil for a three-day state visit, President Lee Jae-myung and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung toured Brazil's C-390 transport aircraft, soon to be introduced in Korea. The president called it the beginning of defense industry cooperation between the two countries. Presidents Lee and Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva last met at the expanded G7 summit in France and held a bilateral summit in Seoul in February. In a written interview with FA News Agency, the South Korean president said he sees ties with South America entering a new phase. He added that reliable partners are needed more than ever in times of rising protectionism and supply chain disruptions. The talks on Monday will involve an official welcoming ceremony, expanded talks, an exchange of MOUs, a joint press conference, and lunch. South Korea is looking to expand trade and investments in South America, for which they will seek resuming negotiations for the Korea-Mercosur trade agreement.
We expect to dramatically increase trade with these countries and support our companies making inroads into the South American market.
Also on the agenda is enhancing cooperation in critical minerals and creating synergy with Korea's advanced technology. Korea is also looking to expand its diplomatic horizons to the global south.
Brazil is the fifth largest country by area and the seventh largest by population. It not only leads the order in the South American region, but also provides active leadership in the UN and G20.
Following a flurry of diplomacy in recent weeks involving the EU, G7, and NATO, President Lee's trip to South America signals a fully fledged diplomacy with the region amid a complicated geopolitical environment. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Brasilia.
And soon after arriving in Brasilia, President Lee held a virtual meeting with the senior aides here in Seoul, ordering the government to keep its emergency economic response in place as tensions in the Middle East continue to drive oil price uncertainty. Take a look.
네, 지금 여기와 대한민국은 정확하게 12시간, 밤 12시간, 낮 12시로 바뀐 상태입니다.
Even from Brazil, President Lee Jae-myung kept up his weekly meeting with senior aides. Held virtually on Sunday evening in Brasilia, the meeting linked the president with officials in Seoul. A major focus was stepping up preparations for the economic fallout from the renewed military conflict between the United States and Iran.
중동 지역 상황이 다시 불안정해지면서 국제 유가가 출렁이고 있습니다. 유가 변동성이 당분간 이어질 가능성이 큰 만큼 국내 물가에 미칠 영향을 최소화하기 위한 선제적 노력을 빠르게 기울여야 되겠습니다.
Lee ordered the government to keep both its fuel price caps and fuel tax cuts in place until global oil prices stabilize. Last week, Seoul froze wholesale fuel price ceilings at their current levels, reversing an earlier plan to lower them as tensions in the Middle East escalated. Fuel tax cuts will also remain in place through September at 15% for gasoline and 25% for diesel. President Lee also instructed officials to prepare additional support measures if the situation worsens. He then went on to order a crackdown on those seeking to profit from the crisis.
기름뿐 아니라 다른 핵심 민생 품목들에 대해서도 매점 매석, 담합행위 같은 사례가 발생하지 않도록 관계 당국이 시장 교란 행위 단속에 만전을 기해 주시기 바랍니다.
The president's remarks came after domestic oil refiners were found to have engaged in a price-fixing scheme worth tens of trillions of won. Trial dates are being scheduled following indictments on charges of violating the Fair Trade Act. Sunday's meeting marked the second time Lee has chaired his top 8 meeting virtually while overseas. The Blue House says the format is intended to ensure there are no gaps in state affairs during the president's foreign trips. Now, before arriving in Brazil, President Lee spent 2 days in the United States, meeting with the heads of leading artificial intelligence firms. The visit led to a combined $950 billion AI partnership announced by companies from both countries. Our Park Jun-an breaks down the agreements and what they could mean going forward.
Korea's role in global AI race is becoming irreplaceable. As the AI industry advances, securing the physical infrastructure to run AI, including semiconductors, data centers, and power grids, has become just as important as developing smart AI models. To further strengthen the AI capabilities, Korean and global tech giants have agreed to a $950 billion alliance, roughly 1.4 quadrillion won. The partnerships cover the entire AI ecosystem, from advanced memory chips to physical AI. Samsung Electronics has signed a $200 billion agreement with Broadcom to supply memory chips and cooperate on AI chip production using advanced foundry processes over the next 5 years. SK Group has secured partnerships worth $750 billion with the likes of NVIDIA, Microsoft, and Anthropic. The project includes SK Telecom's massive 2-gigawatt AI factory in Korea. Naver is also expanding its AI data center in Sejong with up to $10 billion in funding. NVIDIA is expected to invest up to $1 billion, while Brookfield is expected to contribute up to $9 billion. These massive partnerships highlight Korea's critical role as a reliable supplier in the global market.
So I think that Korea is in the golden age of technology right now, because we are the monopoly in global memory chip manufacturing, especially in HBMs, and because we also have foundry business driven by Samsung Electronics. Korea is the center of the global semiconductor supply chain, which is most importantly the basic technology for the AI era, which we live in today.
Beyond chips, Hyundai Motor Group is pushing for physical AI by partnering with NVIDIA and Waymo to advance robotics and autonomous driving. However, challenges remain. While these massive investments boost Korea's leverage in AI, the country must ensure these deals go beyond initial agreements and turn into actual execution. Furthermore, Korea, like many other countries, faces the challenge of securing its own technological sovereignty so that it does not become overly dependent on a few global mega companies. Recognizing this, companies like SK Telecom and Naver are actively building local data centers and developing frontier AI models. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Now, back here at home, Korea's government says it's preparing new measures to boost the housing supply amid growing concerns over the real estate market. Speaking at a public forum on Monday, Prime Minister Han Sung-suk said resolving housing issues remains one of the government's top priorities, while stressing the need to reflect the diverse interests of the public. At the event, Land Minister Kim Yoon-duk said the government will soon unveil measures to encourage the supply of non-apartment housing and diversify corporate rental housing providers. He also said the government is considering partially lifting greenbelt restrictions if necessary to increase housing supply, while emphasizing support for housing stability, particularly for young people and newlyweds. Our other top story tonight. Today, July 27th, marks the 73rd anniversary of the Korean War Armistice Agreement, as well as UN Forces Participation Day. More than 20 countries sent combat troops or medical personnel under the UN flag to help defend South Korea during the 1950s. Now, the government today held a ceremony in Seoul to honor their service and sacrifice. An Sung-jin reports.
July 27th is the United Nations Forces Participation Day. Korea held a national ceremony on Monday honoring the sacrifices of veterans who fought in the Korean War under the banner of the United Nations. This year's theme was Enduring Friendship, a Great Beginning.
At a time like this, the spirit of international solidarity shown during the Korean War is more meaningful than ever. Korea will protect freedom and peace through its strong U.S. alliance and cooperation with UN partner nations.
The event brought together about 1,000 attendees, including Korean War veterans, family members of those who died in the war, and delegates from the 22 UN member states that supported Korea. Individuals were also recognized with government honors for their contributions to preserving the legacy of UN veterans and strengthening international alliances. The Prime Minister reaffirmed Korea's commitments to its alliances amid today's global challenges and pledged continuous support for international peace and humanitarian efforts.
While keeping the door open for dialogue, we will remain prepared against any security threat and continue working with the international community to promote global peace and prosperity.
UN Forces Participation Day commemorates the signing of the 1953 Korean War Armistice Agreement and honors the service of nearly 2 million troops from 22 countries who fought or provided support for the country. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
And continuing our coverage of the anniversary of the Armistice Agreement, for decades, residents living near the border with North Korea have borne the burden of strict security restrictions that have limited tourism, investment, and local industries. The Unification Ministry met with residents today to discuss ways to revitalize those communities. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the story.
At Monday's Border Area Peace and Safety Joint Conference, falling on the anniversary of the 1953 Armistice Agreement, officials from the central government and local governments gathered to discuss how to transform the heavily fortified border region into a center of peace and prosperity. Unification Minister Chung Dong-young highlighted the need to fundamentally shift the purpose of these regions.
We must end this armistice period and transition to a period of peace for the front line to become the center. That is the meaning behind the Second Border Area Peace and Safety Joint Conference being held today.
These 10 border districts stretching across Incheon City, Gyeonggi-do Province, and Gangwon-do Province were historically at the heart of the Korean Peninsula but have spent the past 73 years as isolated military front lines. Local residents have borne heavy security restrictions and economic sacrifices.
It is unprecedented in history to have the Gyeonggi-do Province Governor, Incheon City Mayor, and Gangwon-do Province Governor gathered here together. President Lee Jae-myung's directive is that the special sacrifices made in the border areas must be met with special compensation.
To fulfill this, local leaders have called for designating special economic zones for peace as inter-Korean cooperation projects to secure infrastructure funding. Under the government's master plan, 4 special zones will be designated between 2026 and 2027, with official selections set to be announced soon. Practical deregulation is also moving forward, including eased agricultural restrictions and simplified access to border zones. Central to promoting the region's peace and tourism potential is the government's official portal, dmz.gov't, which opened on Monday. Designed as a comprehensive gateway for global audiences with full English support, the website provides detailed travel information, historical archives, and ecological research on the unique wildlife thriving in the long-term absence of human interference. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, the fighting between the United States and Iran appears to have paused after nearly 2 weeks of escalating strikes. The question now is whether the lull could open the door to renewed diplomacy or whether more military action still lies ahead. Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
President Donald Trump has paused the U.S. military strikes on Iran for a second consecutive night, saying he wants to give diplomacy more time, even as Washington insists that all military options remain on the table. Speaking on Fox News on Sunday, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Mike Waltz said the U.S. leader is giving talks some space, while stressing that the pause should not be seen as a decision against further military action. Waltz also dismissed reports that the administration is concerned about dwindling air defense missile stockpiles, saying the U.S. military has all the resources it needs to continue operations if necessary. Iran also signaled a temporary easing of tensions, with an Iranian military spokesperson saying Tehran has halted its retaliatory attacks, while the country's foreign ministry confirmed that indirect communications with the United States are continuing through mediators, including Qatar and Pakistan. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Esmail Begay said diplomatic channels remain active despite escalating tensions. However, he accused Washington of violating a previous memorandum of understanding, calling it the third diplomatic betrayal by the United States. He said Iran remains committed to defending the country unless the U.S. changes its position. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the conflict with Iran will only end when the Iranian regime either falls or is weakened enough to abandon its nuclear program. In an interview with Fox News on Sunday, Netanyahu said Iran must end its nuclear ambitions with or without a deal, arguing that recent U.S. and Israeli strikes have set Tehran's nuclear program back by several years. He also warned that a nuclear-armed Iran would pose a direct threat not only to Israel, but also to the United States, adding that Israel will continue working closely with Washington to prevent that outcome. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, as Korea endures another sweltering summer, the government today raised the nationwide heat wave alert to the highest level in its 4-tier system. Now, one solution gaining attention here in the country is the expansion of so-called urban forests, designed to cool cities while helping reduce carbon emissions. Park Chae-ryung explains.
On a sweltering summer day, rows of small green boxes stand neatly arranged across an empty field in Hwaseong, Gyeonggi-do Province. Inside the boxes are 1,600 newly planted Paulownia saplings spread across a 2.4-hectare site. For now, they are no bigger than a hand, but within a year, they're expected to grow as high as 4 meters. The project is part of a public-private effort to create a carbon-neutral forest that can help absorb carbon and reduce urban heat.
We hope this place will become more than just a planted area. Over time, we expect it to grow into a forest that helps address the climate crisis and lower urban temperatures.
The project is designed as a response to the climate crisis, but it is also expected to help bring down temperatures in urban areas. This place may not look like a forest yet, but in a few years, it'll be covered in paulownia trees, designed to absorb carbon emissions and lower the heat. Bukhansan Children's Forest in Seoul's Seongbuk-gu district is one example of how urban forests can benefit local communities. Created in 2008, the forest now provides shade for nearby residents and serves as a natural playground where children can experience nature up close.
I like Bukhansan Ecological Forest because it offers untouched nature right in the middle of Seoul. Even in this summer heat, I feel refreshed here with the cool breeze, birdsong, and the sound of cuckoos in June.
Experts say urban forests help cool cities in two key ways: by blocking intense summer sunlight with shade and by lowering air temperatures through transpiration as trees release water vapor from their leaves.
A study by the National Institute of Forest Science found that during summer, urban forests had only 2 days above 33 degrees Celsius, compared with 10 in nearby urban areas.
For now, the saplings in Hwasong are still small. But as Bukhansan Children's Forest shows, the trees planted today could one day become places where people cool down, rest, and reconnect with nature. Park Chae-ryung, Arirang News.
It's Monday, which means it's time to take a look at what's been happening in the world of sports. And for that, as usual, we have our sports editor, Paul Nee, joining us in the studio. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Hello.
Happy Monday. So, Paul, let's first begin with golf. A first LPGA win in 10 years for one South Korean on the tour.
Yes, that's right. Shin Ji-eun on Sunday won the ISPS Handa Women's Scottish Open in North Ayrshire. Shin finished 2 strokes ahead of fellow Korean Kim Ah-rim at 9 under 279. Shin had a 5-stroke lead heading into the final round at 12 under, but shot a 3 over 75 for what was her second career LPGA victory and a winner's check of $300,000. Her last win was the Volunteers of America Texas shootout way back in May 2016. Now, 4 South Koreans have picked up LPGA Tour wins this year now, with Shin joining Lee Mi-hyang, Kim Hyo-ju and Yoo Hae-ran. Lee has 1 victory, while Kim and Yoo each have won twice.
We're starting off with some great news and moving on to football, and Son Heung-min, who seems to have rediscovered his scoring touch.
He does, yes. 3-3 now for him for LAFC after going the domestic season without finding the back of the net. His most recent goal came on Saturday local time at home to Sporting Kansas City, opening the scoring 5 minutes in to help LAFC earn a 4-0 win. On Wednesday, Son got his second of the season, also the opener, but in a 3-1 win at home to Real Salt Lake City. The goals and wins move LAFC up to second in the Western Conference, level on points with Vancouver Whitecaps, but having played 2 games more. Son is now second in MLS for combined goals and assists with 11, made up of 3 goals and a league-leading 8 assists.
Congratulations to our Sonny. And staying with football, a move back to Spain for Korea's very own Lee Gang-in, right?
Yes, he's sealed a move back to La Liga, joining Atletico Madrid. It was a move that seemed to be in the offing for a while, but the club finally made the announcement on Saturday. He signed a 5-year contract and will wear the famous number 7 shirt, and the fee is a reported $45 million. He began his career in Spain with Valencia and later moved to Real Mallorca before signing for Paris Saint-Germain in France, where he won multiple league titles and back-to-back Champions Leagues. He is now the first South Korean to play for one of La Liga's big 3, the others being Real Madrid and Barcelona. He's likely to make his first appearance for the club in Seoul when Atleti take on Manchester City in the Kupang Play Series on Sunday, the 9th of August. The Kupang Play Series begins on Wednesday the 5th with Team K-League taking on Manchester City.
Best of luck to Lee Gang-in. And last but not least, moving on to baseball, I understand that the KBO is on course for another record-breaking season.
Yes, it is, to surpass 10 million total spectators for the 3rd straight year. As of July 25th, and as reported by Yonhap, Total attendance is projected to reach around 12.95 million, with the league averaging approximately 18,000 fans per game. The average occupancy rate has also risen to 86.7%, showing that baseball's popularity continues to grow. Now, leading the way are Hanwha, Samsung and LG. Hanwha have filled 98.2% of seats at Daejeon Hanwha Life Ballpark, while Samsung and defending champions LG have both exceeded 95% despite playing in larger stadiums. With the rainy season being the only factor slowing attendances, the KBO could even reach the 13 million mark this year.
Well, fingers crossed. Thank you for that, Paul.
Thank you.
With a heat wave settling in, temperatures have been building day after day. Heat alerts are in effect across most of the country. And if you're in the Gyeongsang-do provinces, it's been especially brutal. Some spots have been pushing 40 degrees Celsius, bringing dangerously extreme heat. And after a scorching afternoon, the heat won't back up much tonight. Tomorrow, we'll continue to see passing showers across the central regions. The central regions and parts of Gyeongsang-do provinces could see 5 to 40 millimeters of rain. Tropical nights will continue across most regions, with morning lows staying around 26 degrees Celsius in Seoul and Gwangju. Then by the afternoon, Seoul will get up to 33 degrees, Daegu 35 and Jeju 32 degrees. The stretch of day and night heat isn't going anywhere just yet. So if you can, try to stay out of the sun during the hottest part of the day and stay hydrated. Now here's a look at the weather around the world.
And that's Newscenter for tonight. I'm Song Yu-jin, filling in for Kim Da-mi. From all of us here at Arirang, thanks for watching, and we'll be back here tomorrow at 8 p.m. Korea time.
When did it all begin? The beginning of joy embedded in daily life, where steps of learning meet a bigger world. And history coexists. The legend continues. Innovative technologies come together to unfold a new future. Building a better tomorrow. A joy accessible to all. Always present in your daily life. JDC.
Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mo-gyeon. For the past week, Korea has been at the center of global discussions on cultural heritage as it hosts the 48th session of the UNESCO World Heritage Committee. The gathering has brought together experts and policymakers from around the world to discuss how to better protect our shared heritage in the face of growing challenges, from climate change to rapid development. Now, as the meeting draws into a close, it also offers an opportunity to reflect on Korea's own World Heritage sites. Beyond their historical significance, what do they reveal about the country's identity, values, and place in the world? To help us answer those questions, we're joined by a scholar who has spent decades studying Korea and how it shares its history with international audiences. Mark Peterson, professor of Korean Studies at Brigham Young University. A very big welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
So, Professor, let's begin with the latest UNESCO World Heritage Committee that's been hosted by Korea for the first time. So, as someone who has studied Korea for decades, how significant is this moment?
Well, I've been working on Korea for 60 years, since I first went to Korea. And Korea in those days was an obscure, poor country that had no international recognition at all. And it's grown and grown, and it's been kind of logarithmic. It's climbed very rapidly in more recent years. Because Korea's gone from the political sphere into the cultural sphere in great power. And the cultural sphere includes music and movies and theater. And if you look around, arts and symphony and all kinds of things, Korea has really achieved a lot of success in recent years. So it's wonderful, and it's altogether fitting and proper that the UNESCO meetings would be held in Seoul.
Building on that, Korea is now home to 17 UNESCO World Heritage sites. So if we look across them, what do you think makes Korean heritage stand out on the global stage?
Well, there are so many wonderful things about Korean culture. The first heritage sites were couched in Buddhist and Confucian ideology. The first two of the three were Buddhist temples, and the third one was the Chongmyo, which is Confucian ceremonies to the king. And it's expanded then into other cultural areas. One area that I really enjoy personally is the Yangdong village. I have spent 2 summers in Yangdong with students. I took students to live in Yangdong, 15 students one year, 16 students the next year. And we saw they were preparing the paperwork to get ready to apply for UNESCO recognition. So I've seen some of this close up, and it's really been a marvelous thing to see Korea get this kind of recognition.
Wow, so watching them get enlisted in the first hand, it must be a special experience for you. Now, if we take this
it was really exciting.
Right, of course. If we take that a step further, Professor, excuse me, so beyond their historical importance, what do these sites actually tell the world about Korea and its people?
Well, I've been on the scene in Korea, studying Korea for 60 years, and Korea years ago had no recognition. And now so many people around the world see Korea as a cultural, what can you say, multiplex. It's not a simple Korean cultural item. I think years ago, Korea liked to talk about Pulguksa and you know, some of these attractive sites. And the tourist brochures were Pulguksa and Haeinsa and other Buddhist temples and such. But it's so much more complicated now. And you know, for a time, tourism was centered on the courtroom drama, not the courtroom, the palace drama about the cooking. What was that one? Yes, Daejanggung. And all the tourism that came, especially from China, to see the palace where this cooking took place. So the cultural items are very diverse now, centered on music and theater and so many things besides the old temples and the Confucian shrines and that sort of thing. So it's become very multifaceted.
Right, indeed. It really gives us a much deeper picture of Korea and the values that shaped it as well. Then, Professor, do you think some aspects of Korea's heritage are still kind of underappreciated internationally?
Well, I suppose so. You know, interesting question because, you know, I'm so grateful for the recognition Korea has received. You know, there was a time in America where Korea was the TV show MASH. MASH was the old TV show about the Korean War and the soldiers in the medical army surgical hospital, and it was a comedy show, but it depicted Korea as such a poor, rundown place. And I remember in those days, what are we talking about, 70s, 80s, my Korean friends who knew about the American TV just scolded me. They said, can't you show America that Korea is more than just MASH? And so now it is more than MASH. How is it underdeveloped? Well, I'm not sure. You know, on my YouTube channel, I talk a lot about how we need to appreciate Korean culture more. And I'm trying to develop new avenues all the time. But yeah, Korea is so well appreciated now, but we still need to work on showing some of the wider aspects of Korean culture, I think.
Right. Let's hope it could shed light on some parts of Korea's heritage that still need to receive more attention than they actually deserve. Now, heritage, of course, isn't limited to historic sites. Korea's UNESCO-listed tidal flats have now expanded to include several other sites as well. How significant is that latest recognition, Professor?
Oh, that's really interesting because the tidal flats, the Moses, they call it, the flats where at certain times of the tide you can walk way out into the sea. That's very, very interesting and unique around the world. And so yes, let's see what UNESCO thinks about that. And if UNESCO says yes, that's interesting. You know, the beautiful thing about UNESCO and for Korea to look to UNESCO is it puts it in an international perspective, so we can compare Korea in a realistic way to other cultural items in other parts of the world. So for the tidal flats even to be considered is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Right. Now, if we go back for starters, why is it so important to preserve both cultural and natural heritage in today's world, Professor?
Well, you know, especially in Korea, development. Build a factory, build a housing complex, tear it down, you know. And the old song in America was, pave paradise and put up a parking lot. That's such a great expression, to ruin paradise, to ruin the natural world and put up a parking lot and a building and modern things like that. You know, one thing that's really marvelous about Korean cultural preservation is Korea has a very strict salvage archaeology rule. Salvage archaeology means that anytime a road or a railroad or a building or a factory goes into an area, they have to do salvage archaeology. That means not a deep, serious archaeological dig, but to go through quickly and just make sure there's not something significant archaeologically under the earth at that point. And I understand the builders just hate that because that gets in the way of their building proposal and their building plans. But they have to go through very quickly to make sure there's not some archaeological site there. And through that process, Korea's discovered quite a number of interesting archaeological sites. So cultural preservation goes in many, many levels, archaeological, you know, prehistory sorts of things, as well as modern cultural, as well as natural things, you know, the forests and the woods and the tidal flats as well.
Right, so preserving itself is really essential because they tell different but connected stories about our history as well. Now, if we look into the future, Professor Peterson, as more people around the world take more interest in Korea, how can the country protect its heritage while also making it also accessible to more people?
Yeah, that's a good question, because the UNESCO recognition makes a big difference. That says this is important. We can't change this. We can't destroy this. We must preserve this. It's not just Korean. It's the world. It's a world treasure. So it helps Korea to be more conscious of its place in the world and preserving cultural sites within Korea. It's a marvelous thing. It's a marvelous thing. If it weren't for that, I'm afraid that for the sake of development, and Korea has developed so much, I think for the sake of development, some old things might have been destroyed. And this is true around the world. That's why UNESCO is doing this. That's why they're saying to all the countries of the world, hey, what do you have that's really, really culturally important that we need to protect just in case someone else wants to tear it down?
Right. So this challenge, it's making heritage accessible without putting it at risk. Now, along those lines, then, do you think the global popularity of Korean culture, like K-pop to K-dramas, has also changed the way people kind of engage with Korea's history and heritage as well?
Yes, it makes a difference. It deepens the appreciation for Korea, because if you understand K-pop and some of the recent dramas, you look at Korea as a modern phenomenon. But then when you come to Korea, or you learn more about Korea, you see this deeper layer of culture, and you learn more about the Buddhist tradition and the Confucian tradition and the deeper cultural aspects of Korea. So the modern cultural phenomenon help us to appreciate the old phenomenon as well, because when you look at the modern, you cannot help but come in and see more of the deeper tradition as well.
Right, definitely. It's really interesting because Hallyu may be kind of opening the door to a much broader interest in Korea to a broader range of people as well. Now, if we kind of look ahead, what do you see as the biggest challenge in ensuring Korea's world heritage continues to inspire future generations moving forward?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Don't ask me that question, because my biggest concern about Korea is the human heritage. My biggest concern about Korea is the low birth rate. Korea is committing national suicide by having such a low birth rate. If you have 100 mothers now, but they only have a birth rate of 0.6, that means you'll only have 30 mothers in the next generation. And the next generation, you'll only have 6 mothers. And they call it the population precipice, or falling over the edge. And that's my biggest concern about Korea today, is not so much the cultural heritage as much as the human heritage. If we have all this cultural heritage around us and the natural environment around us, but we don't have enough people to maintain the population, to pay for the older people that get older, to pay for the military. It's a serious business. So that's my biggest concern for the future. It's beyond the cultural and more the personal and social aspect of Korea.
Right, a very important point that you've mentioned, maintaining and also fostering future generations for human heritage will be very important and a very important task for the country moving forward. Now, finally, before we let you go, so you spent 60 years of your career studying Korea. What do you believe is the greatest value of preserving its world heritage for the future?
Well, Korean culture is so unique in so many interesting ways. A lot of it, these days they talk about DNA, Korean DNA. And I don't believe in DNA as a uniquely physical thing. That's almost a racist point of view. But Korea has cultural DNA. For generation after generation after generation, Korea has had unique culture, going back to installing the examination system, where everybody wanted to study to pass the exams, the exams, the exams, the exams. And, you know, we talk about that today, but it goes back 1,000 years, literally 1,000 years. And it's been so important for Korea because with the focus on the exams, it means you have a central state. You don't have a feudal state the way you do in Japan, where everybody's fighting with each other. You have a centralized state that's a much, much more peaceful state. So Korea has inherited this peaceful tradition that runs 1,000 years, a peaceful tradition that's centered on learning, on education. And I think that's the most interesting and most remarkable thing about Korean culture. Cultural DNA, it really makes Korea a unique place.
Well, it's a fitting reminder that preserving heritage is ultimately about passing Korea's story on to the next future generation. But I'm afraid we'll have to leave our discussion right here. Professor Peterson, thank you so much for joining me this evening and sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Let me come again.
Thank you. And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.